There is one name, one that stands alone as the OG of crime thrillers. 80 million plus books sold.
Creator of Harry Bosch, Michael Connelly is the godfather of modern crime thrillers, and his real-life stories are just as wild.
You get off the crime beat at the LA Times to start your writing career just as the biggest crime story in history erupts around you.
This is a bombshell.
It was extraordinary.
I was actually happy that I wasn't involved in that. Sometimes I have to say, yeah, I'll never use that because no one will believe it. When you get the people that were on ground zero, how could you not tell the story? Nobody ever paid for that. And it became a real question, like, do we want to stir that hornet's nest? You do see blood splatter on the wall, people whose faces are not recognizable anymore. The first story kind of came from there. That became Harry Bosch. I've invested my entire adult writing life in Harry Bosch.
It's more background and detail that readers love, and it makes it almost easier because you can... He created the Harry Bosch series, the Harry Bosch character, Lincoln Lawyer, many, many more, and he put together one amazing docu-series on the Wonderland killings, and he is with us today. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tom Zenner, host of 1 Degree of Scandalous right here on the Tom Zenner Scandal YouTube channel with the one and only Cato K-Train Kalin, co-host of 1 Degree of Scandalous. Cato, good to see you. We have a very special guest in studio. And how about this, man? In the middle of all the promotion for the final episode of his Bosch series, he comes in. The one and only Michael Connelly.
We're doing fist pounds. We're doing fist pounds.
Of course
It's great.
we are,
I
man.
love that.
Of course we are. Cato, so Michael, you cut your teeth at the LA Times after moving up from Florida.
Yep.
Big crime reporter there. You get to LA in 87. And your tenure there, oh, by the way, that was peak crime time in LA. Never a murder not to cover, or 3 every day. But you leave in 1994. The O.J. Simpson saga starts in 1994. Have you ever met Cato before?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I've never met Michael. Are we on record now? Do we Michael and I swear in?
You are both under oath.
Yeah.
Michael, what about that timing? You get off the crime beat at the LA Times to start your writing career just as the biggest crime story in history erupts around you.
Well, believe it or not, I thought it was good timing. Because as you all know, that case, changed the way media was, and it really became a big cluster, what they say. And that story was very hard, I think. I mean, I wasn't a reporter then. I just retired to become a full-time novelist, which was my goal in life since I was a teenager. And, so I was actually happy that I wasn't involved in that, where everything had 25 reporters gathered around Cato or whoever. And so it was not something that I felt I missed out on. 2 things happened. The earthquake happened right after.
Northridge in 94?
Yeah,
94
and the OJ, and I didn't have anything to do with any of them. And you're right, like for 12 years, I, had the go bag, and I had to run out the door when something big happened. But I was happy to leave that behind. I was living in the hills above where Fairfax ends, and I had a southern view. And that day, I could see all the helicopters. I was in the back room writing a novel, and my wife comes in and goes, "You gotta go see this." And it was like, it's on TV, and then we look out our windows and we could see all the helicopters slowly, coming up 405 and stuff, and it was pretty wild. And then when the procession, slow motion chase ends at Rockingham, and and it's on TV, I saw the guy that took my place, and I really said to my wife, "Thank God I'm not there."
Huh. Did you actually have an OJ story that you?
Well, that was it.
Yeah,
was
right.
Like, being on the edge of the OJ case and being happy,
but never meeting him at all.
No, I've never met him. No.
I find that interesting because for a guy like you, but I didn't know that your number one goal was to become a novelist, because you might think too, oh my God, I left a little too soon. I could be in the middle of this. But then the pressure of trying to find something new on that case every day for a year and a half, it would have been mounting. So I get how you probably were a little relieved, but you had to have some confidence in that first novel too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had an overlap. I was actually writing, I was confident that I could do this for a while. I would not have to go slinking back to the newspaper business. I was actually writing my 4th novel when I left the Times. But and very early on, I not only wanted to be a novelist, but I really wanted to be a crime novelist because that's what I like to read, kind of books handed down to me by my mom, and so that's why as my dad said, if that's very specifically what you want to do, then if I were you, I'd go get a journalism degree, get a press pass, get into police stations and courtrooms, and learn what you want to write about, and that's how it worked out.
You got the OJ case. You had Richard Ramirez, Jeffrey Dahmer, and you're a novelist for crime. Is there anything that you go, I can't believe this is happening? Does anything even surprise you that like this is so insane? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean that case is one in as an example, the OJ case. But it's weird. You have to be more believable in fiction. We all know reality has so many strange things,
right.
and I still am connected with a lot of detectives, and they help me with my work, and they'll tell me stories, and sometimes I have to say, yeah, I'll never use that because no one will believe it. I actually wrote a story when I was at the Times about the cops got this tip that these guys were selling drugs out of this apartment, and they went up and hammered on the door, and someone said, come in, and they went in, and there were drugs and guns just in open, but it was a parrot that said, come in. Oh. And so then it became a whole case of whether they had probable cause to enter and all that, because so I actually put that in a book, and my editor said, nah, that's not believable. Take it out.
I got a name for that book. Paulie want a crackhead?
Yeah. I like that name. I like it. Can you say, I can't see a parrot being sworn in.
Yeah.
And that's a true story.
Yeah. Truth can be stranger than fiction, especially when it comes to LA crime and the things that go on around here. But hey, this is going to be an epic episode. This is Michael Connelly. And when I was growing up in television, right, and traveling around the country, I always was reading your books. I'm going to send you a picture of my library at home. I've got the whole Connelly section. It's fantastic. My daughters love you. And this episode's going to be great. Now, we did the episodes on the Wonderland killings. Yeah. There's no bigger authority on that, and that's what we're going to dive in right away. And then we're going to talk about Michael's career, Harry Bosch, Lincoln Lawyer, all these novels. He's got a new book coming out in May of 2025, which is next month. So much to dive in here, Michael. And you missed the Night Stalker by a couple years. The Wonderland killings were 6 years before you got to LA. You probably heard of them when you were working in Florida. But what triggered you? What caused the interest that kind of stuck with you? It's almost like a passion project, or you were obsessed with it, but you know so much about it. You put together this great docuseries. Why?
Well, I had done a couple of true crime podcasts, and including one on Wonderland. And what I've been finding, I mean, first of all, I get access. I'm very lucky that because I try to be as accurate as I can with my fiction, a lot of people in law enforcement appreciate that. And so when I come calling and say, hey, I'm writing about this, I want to get it right, more often than not, I'm accepted, and they tell me what I'm, help me with what I'm looking for. And so I kind of knew Tom Lang, who was in the big OJ guy. I knew him from way back when I was a reporter from other cases, long before before the OJ case. And so I just kind of reached out to him and said, there's got to be stuff about this case that hasn't been, revealed over time. And he's retired. He had written a book about all of his cases. Besides, he wrote one about OJ as well, but he wrote one that was kind of like everything that he's ever done before OJ. And so it kind of started there. When you get the people that were on, ground zero and were there and they're willing to tell you about it, it's, that how could you not tell the story? A lot of what I do in my fiction with Harry Bosch and so forth is, try to get, it's not just the facts man type writing. It's you go inside these people, and I try to get what it takes to do that work and suffer the slings and arrows of the public and all that kind of stuff. And he's had a lot of slings and arrows in his career, with OJ and other cases. And so very interesting to talk to him and his partner at that time. And when I had that kind of access, it was like, maybe we could do something more than a podcast. Maybe we can do a documentary.
Yeah, but then when you start doing a docuseries like that, that's work. I mean, you're digging through archives. You got to set up these interviews. You got to paste these things. And then the editing process. You've written books. That can be a lonely process. I'm a writer. I've written a lot of books too. It's tough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not at anywhere near your level, but it's tough every day to crank something out. How about that? Was that a nice release for you, telling a story in a different way and narrating it like you did?
Well, it was a bit surprising. So you start with the director. We got this director who had mostly done music documentaries and had done the bucolic side of Laurel Canyon, you know, about the music and the 70s and all that stuff. And so she wanted to do the flip side, the dark side. And the Wonderland murders were kind of you know, the tombstone at the end of that period of great music and things like that.
Yeah.
But it came as a surprise to me when she said, we're putting you on camera and you're going to be driving the streets and the camera will be on you and you will be on camera doing interviews and stuff like that. So I had to kind of wrap my head around that because, you know, writers are pretty much introverts and like being in a room by themselves and, as you say, cranking it out. And so it was a big change for me. I think it worked out okay, but I don't know if I'll do that again.
Is there anybody in the docuseries that you wanted? You said, I got to get this one person. I got to get them to be on camera with me. And they kept turning you down because I imagine they don't want to be involved. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we made, there's stuff, you know, it's an unrequited justice. You know, no one really ever went away. The big guy, you know, did some time in prison, but you know, the people who actually went in that house and did that kind of brutality, nobody ever paid for that. And you know, so when we were doing this, we kind of got some ideas about who those people were, and it became a real question, like, do we want to stir that hornet's nest, you know, because some of them are still alive. And, you know, and Tom Lang and his partner didn't want to go on record with that. So
lawsuits and whatever comes up.
I mean, if you can't prove it, don't say it.
Right.
And that was, you know, kind of governed us as well. But I also felt like some stuff was left on the table.
Well, you got everything out of Scott Thorson. I mean, everything, you milked everything you possibly could from him. It was a moment of reckoning, I think, for him too, to get a lot of that out. And he died shortly after that too. Yeah, it's a fascinating docuseries. And the whole Wonderland thing is just incredible. Question for you. Lang recorded the crime scene on a video camera. First time really that's ever been done.
Right, yeah.
Happened to be in the trunk of a car. Go back and listen to the episode we had with Tom Lang. It's chilling and it's crazy. Did you look at that video? Did you see what he recorded?
Oh, yeah.
How gruesome was it? Because they talk about it being one of the most gruesome crime scenes that anyone's seen. Law enforcement, reporters, anybody.
Lead pipe killings.
Skulls. And Lang has that great line where when he was walking in, they told him to put your galoshes on. That's how bad it was. So describe, if you can, what you saw in the carnage.
Well, it's oddly, it's on YouTube. What I think buffers you is that it's deteriorated over time. So it has a little kind of otherworldly feel to it, but you do see, you know, blood splatter on the walls, people whose their faces are not recognizable anymore because of the beatings. It's pretty terrible, but there is this kind of step back from it because it's, you know, it's like 45-year-old video.
Yeah.
You know, so.
You got Lang narrating it as he's walking through. It's just classic.
Yeah.
You know, it's only in LA, one of those stories, right? And then you got a legendary figure a few years later, it's the OJ saga. By the way, if you had met Cato and covered the OJ saga, that could have been a great character for one of your books. Yeah. You know, you got to know Cato. Right.
Well, I think the way I'm interpreted as like they did on the series with Ryan Murphy is the Spicoli from Fast Times, and I was like, okay, whatever they're gonna choose, it's nothing I can do. You know, they made their choice. That's what they're gonna write about me. So, but what can I do?
Did you ever have any interactions with Eddie Nash? Because you know he's the pivotal guy, and he's larger than life, scary. You don't want to cross him. For some reason, John Holmes thought it was a good idea to cross him. You know, he had no choice. But how bad was Holmes' cocaine habit? Because in the docuseries, didn't you say that he was making like $1,000 a day and spending $1,500 or something like that?
He was in serious debt, and I don't know the money values, but basically everything that he was bringing in was going out to get drugs, and that's why he was involved in ripping Eddie Nash off, a guy he knew was extremely violent and vindictive. That shows how deep his addiction was, that he would risk that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he's thinking. I think if he's doing the drug, he's thinking that he's no one can touch me now. But he's so high in his head that he's thinking, okay, I'm gonna take the risk.
Yeah, bad choice.
Bad choice. Yeah.
So many of your stories and your characters and your books, deal with the dark side of LA, and you have this amazing character development with Bosch and everybody that you bring, the Lincoln lawyer. What did you see out on the streets? Was it you never knew what was going to come next? Wherever you're assigned, murder, whatever, carnage on a daily basis. Did it shock you to see just behind the curtain of how bad the crime scene was in LA during that time?
No, I kind of came here knowing. I mean, I also came from South Florida, in Miami, which was very similar in terms of everything. Kind of not everything, but a lot of crime all started with drugs, and it was the same out here. You become a quick study of a town when you're a reporter because you're hitting the road all the time. But as you said in the intro, the years I was there were the highest years of homicide in this county by far. We'd go over 1,000 murders. And so it was literally, I'd go to my editor and I say, I got these 4 murders, and they would decide, okay, that's a big story. That's nothing. We'll get that one later or something if they arrest somebody. And you're really making judgments on, the value of people's lives, which is weird, but there was just so much. And back then it wasn't an online paper. So you had limited space. And, they say, give me 3 inches on that. That's a good takeout. You run with that one, that kind of thing.
It's like Holmes. Everything's kind of a moral dilemma of what they go through, not so much like the planning of the crime. So you said earlier that all these detectives, you have they respect you, so it's kind of a little easier for you that they all want to meet you. And I know that L.A. Confidential wasn't one of your something you wrote about, but meeting all these detectives you did meet, did they ever say yes? There's corruption because there is corruption in anything. Did you see that ever? I'm not asking you to say names, but
I didn't.
It's just because you hear so much about corruption that it exists. And
to me, it's more like moral corruption. Like I didn't see cops getting paid off, and I'm sure that happens. I mean, obviously that kind of stuff happens, but it was more like the cops who didn't care anymore that became, mired in the us versus them, and which leads to brutality and things like that. But knowing what I wanted to do, I wanted to write about, cops who kind of take that, it's like, it's that Nietzsche thing when whoever fights monsters take care not to become a monster, and some do and some don't. Mm-hmm. I wanted to write about the ones that didn't, that took that burden and found some way of dealing with it. It's a job where every day you go out into the darkness, and it's like a law of physics. You throw a ball against the wall, ball bounces back. If you go into darkness, it's going to get into you, and you have to figure out how to deal with that, how to keep yourself healthy, and not become morally corrupt, not let it metastasize like a cancer inside you.
Right, and you probably, when you're a young reporter, back when you work in Florida and you're doing the beat here in L.A., you must have kept little notes going, this is going to be great for a novel one day. This is going to be, I'm going to use this thing. You're going to remember a line a detective said, that's a great line for a character. So, I mean, I think of jokes that way, but you obviously do that, right? Like you probably had stuff that...
I had a completely different motive from every other reporter I knew. I was putting stuff metaphorically in my back pocket all the time.
Yeah.
Like little things like handcuffs as your tie tacks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Stuff that had no business being in a newspaper story, but I knew this is like gold. Like I saw a detective once. There was a murder by Angel's Flight, and where they have turnstiles, and they back then they used to black fingerprint powder, and they would all warn each other because they didn't want to get on their suit because the department didn't pay for cleaning.
Oh.
That little detail
Right.
Yeah, it's just
is about the life, but you don't put that in a newspaper story, but that's gold in a book.
completely.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's
You know?
like how much they get, because it just shows you how much they don't get paid.
Right.
It's like, oh, I got to do dry cleaning. I got to worry about
Yeah.
fingerprints on a dead, body. Or
Well, and that's something you can't, after the fact, when you become a novelist, go back and ask cops about because you
Yeah.
wouldn't even know it existed. So
Yeah.
it's almost like being a crime reporter was the perfect ends to the means of what you really wanted to do, and
Yeah.
you're investigating these detectives and watching their procedures and their routines. Almost probably more excited about gleaming stuff from them as you were covering the story because so many people in the media, ego, right? Name on the front page, LA Times broke this story, but you're probably thinking, this is all great background that's going to go in this novel of this character I'm going to create named
Yeah.
Harry Bosch or something like that. So yeah, with the perfect way for you. And the other thing it helps with, when you have that level of detail that you've taken from these crime scenes and these great detectives, it's words in a novel. It's less things that you have to make up. When you're writing fiction, it's more background and detail that readers love. And it makes it almost easier because you can, it's probably 1,000 words in a book or more just on some of those things that you wouldn't have known.
Well, actually, and detectives love it too because they go, yeah, we've said this before. They relate to you. They go,
There's a
"This
bunch
guy
of detectives
knows."
who think they're the origin of Harry Bosch. And I've heard about, other people say, this guy said he's the model for Harry Bosch. Did you even know him? And it's like, no, I don't know that.
So much for your story at the water cooler, bro. Sorry. Oh, you can see these guys wanted to, latch on to that. When did you come up with the Harry Bosch character? When did that just pop into your head?
It was pretty soon after I got here. I came in 1987. I was 30 years old. And on the day I arrived, there was, I should back up a little bit, that when I was growing up as a teenager, my dad was a builder, and I worked for him, and I worked on a crew that he had. And one of the guys on the crew had been a tunnel rat in Vietnam. And to me, that was, when I found out what that entailed, I thought it was the scariest thing ever. And he wouldn't really talk about it. He had a beard to cover some scars over something that happened over there. And so he's this really, this amazing figure of intrigue to me. So then many years later, I come to the LA Times, and on the day I arrive, there was this big heist where guys had tunneled underneath a bank and up into the safe deposit box over the Labor Day weekend and spent 3 days in there popping boxes and stealing everything. And it was like my first story when I got here, and it just, atoms smashing together and creating something new. It was like my idea or my interest in this guy when I was a teenager, and this tunnel robbery, tunnel. And so the first story kind of came from there, and I said, I'm going to make a detective who was a tunnel rat work this case. And that became Harry Bosch.
Yeah, that sounds like a movie, a Gerard Butler movie or something. Build a tunnel, go into the safe deposit box for 3 days and clean them out.
A law-abiding citizen, he had the tunnel, but that's a little
You wouldn't even think you could do that. You wouldn't think you could pull that off. I mean, the ingenuity it takes, the planning.
Well, I just saw a story that someone did that last weekend into a place where jewelers leave their stuff when their store is closed. They don't leave it in the store. They take it to this supposedly impregnable vault, and somebody got in there and got like $20 million worth of gold and jewelry over the last weekend here in LA.
I guess smash and grabs are out now. They're not in vogue anymore here in LA.
Nah, they'll always be in vogue.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, maybe not.
up to
hopefully.
$950 they're in vogue.
Yeah, so amazing. And then did you think the Bosch character had the legs that it did? Could you see down the line this could be a TV show, or do you not even allow yourself to think that, or a movie?
Well, yes and no. You keep your head down and, just try to be the best writer you can be. But, I'm easily inspired by good movies and TV shows growing up, as well as books. And so I got lucky. My first book, I'm not an overnight success. My first book had a printing of 12,000 copies. And that's why I stayed at the LA Times till I was writing my fourth. But Paramount came along when my second book came out. They were both Harry Bosch books, and they optioned it. They never made it. Luckily, I think they had some screenplays written, but they just never made it because of yeah, I think somebody said to me, like, you can see this on TV every night, so why make a movie about it? You know, cops.
Right.
And I get that. But they paid me enough money that I was able to quit my job right before the OJ case. So it all worked out.
But you're also seeing success from like Dick Wolf,
Yeah.
David Kelly, and you're thinking to yourself, my stuff is good, it's if not better, and that has to. I don't know if you know Dick Wolf and these guys, but that's what they do, and then you're right in line with Harry
David
Bosch.
Kelly made Lincoln Lawyer. The TV show is a David Kelly thing. So yeah, I know him. I've talked to Dick Wolf one time, but I don't really know him. But Dave and I have a good partnership on that show.
Are you able to release some of your creative control when TV networks, studios get involved because they own it, they've licensed it or whatever, they're going to make decisions because, you know, you may have a different vision for an actor playing that character and you want him to be true to what you created, right? So how much say did you have in casting?
Well, it's different. I mean, I've had 2 movies made, and those were ones where they don't want you involved. It's like, hey, go write another book. We'll take it from here.
Yeah.
But the Bosch thing, I started writing about Harry Bosch in 1987. The first book didn't come out until 92, but I've invested my entire, adult writing life in Harry Bosch. So when Amazon called around 12, 13 years ago and said, let's make a TV show, I said, yeah, let's do it, but I'm coming with this project and I'm going to have a say. And Amazon was new at streaming and in production, and they really made some agreements with me. They probably regretted, like they signed a contract that said every shot would be shot in Los Angeles, and that is a very expensive signature they wrote there. But it's what made the show really
Makes it more
good.
authentic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be doing that in Toronto or Vancouver.
And so to get to your question, yeah, I had something to say. I was the one who suggested Titus Welliver. I didn't have like contractual approval, but I said, I think this guy, has the interior that I think is Harry Bosch. He's got something going on behind his eyes, baggage back there. And he went through the process and ended up with the job. So, and that was great.
Well, please tell me that Jeff Bezos thanked you, sent you a nice cheese platter or something, maybe $1 million, because
Got to take it to Blue Origin.
first original content for Amazon, it's a massive hit and it's still the biggest success on Amazon. Do you have a relationship with Bezos?
I've met him a few times, had lunch with him twice.
Pre-Lawrence Sanchez?
I have not gotten the ticket to
Dorky
space.
Bezos or superhero Bezos?
I haven't seen him in a long time, so it was early on.
175,000 if you want 11 minutes in space on Blue Origin. 185 if you leave from Newark. I don't know if you know that's a true story. So I got to talk to Bezos about that. If you leave from that city.
Hey man, they're taking some heat, those ladies, for doing it. And they want to just come down, kiss the ground. And boy, people are saying, what's up? It's not real. You have a satanic patch on your suit, Katy Perry. It's funny. They weren't really exactly welcome.
Because there's no weight when you're in space. So
William Shatner was one of the ones who went up early in that, and he wrote a really interesting essay on it, and it was not like this was amazing. It was more like I felt very sad when I was up there. Yeah, it's worth reading. Pretty good.
They have a simulator of the Blue Origin, and I was telling Cato and Zeus before the show, I actually was, I think, the first person to ride in that simulator. Not that it's a huge deal, but you totally got it. You got the gravity. It shook, it moved. It was the scale, exact same size, but still, you're going up into space. It only lasted 11 minutes, but up and down, yeah. If that thing had Bezos's face plant was the funniest thing about that. Running to the door and goes down.
Fell,
yeah. Okay, how about Matthew McConaughey in Lincoln Lawyer? I mean, he could not have been a better person for that role. And were you happy with that? Did you have any say in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It was one of the ones I didn't have anything to do with. But about a year before he took the job, I was watching that that movie with Ben Stiller and Matthew McConaughey plays this over the top.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder. Yeah. He plays his agent over the top.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's something about that performance, and I was in the theater and I leaned to my wife and I said he'd be a really good Mickey Haller, and then like a year later he was. So it's pretty cool.
They probably
That's one of my favorite movies. And it relaunched McConaughey because this is 2011. He got out of the romantic comedy, kind of genre that he was, pigeonholed in, and they call it the McConaughey sauce, right? Almost the renaissance of Matthew McConaughey, where it triggered him. Then he wins an Oscar.
And he was, he's very interesting. Like, so I wasn't part of that project, but he brought me in because he reached out to me and said, "You're not a lawyer, right?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, then you research this with lawyers?" And I said, "Yeah, 2 of them." He goes, "Okay, I got to meet them." And so I brought them to him so he could ask questions and prep. And so then I got on the set a few times. And one of my conversations with him was amazing because he said he knew that's what he was going to do. He said, "This is the first step in a new direction. I'm pivoting." And he mentioned True Detective was up next, and then he mentioned.
I was going to say that helped him out. True Detective. It's also your line of expertise too. So it's a kind of a godsend. You mentioned earlier that your first book you put was only 12,000 copies made. So do they ever think about re-releasing it and doing a reprint because you're?
Yeah, it's still out there. Because of the show mostly. Yeah, people jump on the books, and a lot of people want to start at the beginning. So it sold. It had 12,000 printing, but over the years, it's got to be over 1 million by now.
Black Echo. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Black Echo, first one in 1992, and then the cast for Lincoln Lawyer. You had at least 2 Academy Award winners. You had Marissa Tomei in that thing. Ryan Felipe was perfect for that role he played. Yeah. And just the whole story of him having to have that driver and going through in the bike gang. It felt real. I mean, they did a great job with that.
A lot of, I'm still a journalist is what I say. And I'm not a creative genius. I know how to throw out a net and put stuff in my back pocket. And, most of the things that I write are actually somewhat true. And so the 2 lawyers that I mentioned that I
set McConaughey up with.
Yeah. And they've helped me through all the, I think I've written 8 Lincoln Lawyer books. One of them was like the house attorney for a motorcycle gang. And that's, I just took real life and put it in. And that's what I do a lot. I mean, like we were talking about in my journalism days, a defense attorney one time, I was talking to him really not for the newspaper, but for my own research and fiction. I popped the question, like, what's it like to always be repping, people who are guilty and who, are guilty of something. Maybe they're overcharged. Most likely they're overcharged, but they're in court for a reason, and the guy said, like, I don't want to have any innocent clients. And he said, there's nothing as scary as an innocent man, because if you mess up that case, you live with that. And so years later, that's the first line of the first Lincoln Lawyer book.
Yeah, that's cool.
Speaking of that, I just only because it's going on now, you probably have an opinion about it. Is there's a Karen Reed trial going on, and that's possibly there's corruption. We don't know yet. It's going to be I think a retrial.
Yeah.
Right. And I've watched parts of. I don't have certain things I can't figure out with a broken taillight and that. But do you have an opinion on that of what you? Just what your expertise, because I have watched some of it, and it's just so intriguing to see. First of all, I don't know why she's even in a series like this Netflix or HBO. Someone released it because anybody can form an opinion about someone, like I hate her or I love her, and and her lawyers are on there, and it just seems like they play to the camera. But regardless, do you think innocence or guilt?
I think I lean towards guilt, but I try to keep an open mind. Her lawyer, Alan Jackson, is a big LA. He was a prosecutor here, and like I knew him when I was a reporter.
I think I met the guy. He works with an Emily. They're partners. Whoever, I forget her name.
So he went from being major crimes prosecutor to now handling a lot of big cases. Kevin Spacey's attorney and so forth. So knowing him, and I also did a true crime podcast where he was the lawyer for the defense, and he lost that case. But it's interesting because I know him a bit, and to see him, what state is that? It's Rhode Island or something. I don't know where it is, but
Is it Massachusetts? I think Boston.
Yeah.
It took place in Boston.
yeah.
In Canton, that's what's
So
called.
that kind of infiltrates my thinking about like, is she guilty or not? And it's, that show is, I think, pro defense. It's all from the defense side mostly.
Right.
They have the camera in their sessions where they're strategizing and stuff.
Right.
So. And as you say, they're playing for the camera.
Right. And I think who would do that, first of all? I would never. I'd want my case. I'd want to make sure that if you're on trial, it's like, no, I don't want to be on anything. I want to have it settled.
Yeah.
Then I'll do a show if I'm acquitted.
Yeah.
So it is interesting because your mind must work. You must see things in your mind like this character, because you have to form an opinion of.
Everyone has an opinion, but I don't think I'm more informed because of what I do. I've watched a lot of trials and so forth, but as we said, the truth is stranger in fiction. Like, why would she bring this into her life? This show and so forth. And does that have anything to say about whether she did it or not? I mean, is her ego that big that she wants a show about this to prove her innocence? Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
It's
ego
very interesting.
plays into that one. When you were a beat reporter or crime reporter, did you intentionally try to cultivate relationships with detectives to get information? And were you able to? Like, I know they're always hesitant to get too close to the media.
Right.
They don't trust the media you have two separate agendas. But was that part of your success? Is the relationships that you could cultivate with some of these guys that are in the trenches solving these crimes?
Yes and no. I mean, I kind of grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and one of my jobs was covering crime there for the local newspaper. And that was the kind of it was a small town back then, and that was the kind of thing I just walk into the detective bureau and say, what's happening? LAPD is kind of a fortress, and as a bureaucracy, it hates the LA Times because the LA Times would always, that's the noble bargain of police work. If you do it right, no one's going to notice it. If you screw it up, it's in the LA Times.
Right.
And so they're very media sensitive and very smart about it. And so it gets very hard. But, I covered the crime, LAPD for 7 years. So eventually I broke through and I had sources and stuff. And sometimes you build sources and then you lose them because you've done something, not that you wrote something wrong, but you crossed some kind of line. Like the one thing cops hate is if you go to their house. They want to feel that no one can find them.
Yeah.
And so like when the Rodney King tape came out and there's all these cops standing around watching, we found out who they were. We found out where they lived, and I had to go knock on doors. And when that spread, I lost a lot of sources because you just don't do that. And, so I had to start over and rebuild.
But you had to, right?
Yeah.
Your editors would have been pissed off if you didn't.
Yeah.
It's part of the job.
And I mean, that's one of the things I think I stayed too long. I was into my fourth book, and I think financially I could have left earlier, but I was thinking this press pass gets me stuff I need. But what I didn't realize was there was still always going to be a dimension of standing off from me because what they told me could end up in a newspaper. So once I turned in my press pass and I was no longer writing for a newspaper, my sources told me all kinds of stuff that they would have never told me as a reporter. And I realized like, oh, shoot, I could have left 2 years ago and maintained the same kind of relationships and gotten what I needed.
Yeah, Michael, I don't know. Really didn't work out for you. I mean, that was really a bad career blunder on your part, man.
What a blunder.
Seemed to work out okay. Tell me when you create a character like a Harry Bosch and you have a fan base of millions of people that think they know Harry Bosch, they can't wait for the next book. How much pressure is it for you to keep coming up with something interesting for these fans? Is that ever in your mind, or are you just a writer? You're going to write what you want to write, but man, you're getting fan mail, you're getting comments.
It's self-pressure. I don't need fans. I know to sustain a character like Harry Bosch has been going on 33 years now, and I'm not finished writing about him. It can't be static book to book. You got to have pivot. You have to have big pivots. Like, I had him, I don't know, about 8 years in, he discovered he had a daughter. So the first 8 years were about him kind of having this armor that no one can get to me. I have no family. I have not, all I am is about the mission, and nothing will stop that. And then he discovers he has a daughter, so now he can be gotten to. And when you have a kid, your worldview changes. So that was a big pivot that allowed me to sustain the character. And then, I'll do another pivot. He retired and became a private eye, that kind of stuff. You always have to keep things changing. And I'm lucky because I made a decision. You talk about blunders. This is the opposite of a blunder. I decided I'd age him in real time. And so, he's evolved over 30 years against a city that has had remarkable changes in the last 30 years. And so, you can keep things moving and keep things changing. Like over the course of his career, he's been shot. He's got cancer. He's like being treated for cancer. His knees creak. He needs a knee replacement. So, and
real
that's
life.
Yeah, it's real life. And that's what people connect to. The people who read my books, guess what? A very small percentage of them have ever solved a murder, but they're reading about a guy who solves murder. But you connect on the real stuff, the way someone deals with their daughter, the way someone deals with cancer, that kind of stuff. And that's the grounding point between reader and character.
I got a great PR stunt for you.
All right, I gotta hear this.
Let the word out that it's going to be the last, or not even that it's going to be the last Harry Bosch book, but on page 1, Bosch gets run over by a bus. And then it's 347 blank pages after that.
Oh, nice.
That's great PR.
Well,
Damn you, Connelly.
Right.
Right? You deserve a break. Yeah. How long does it take you to crank out a novel? And I'm sure it varies a little bit, but are you ever working on 2 simultaneously?
No, I'm one at a time. I've worked on scripts for the shows while writing a novel, but I always just do one at a time. And it depends on what character it is. Harry Bosch, I know so well. I'm not a cop, but I kind of know how that stuff goes. So I can write one of those in about 8 months. The Lincoln Lawyer stuff takes more research. I have to go to lawyers and say, do I have this right, or how do I do this? I need this to happen in a courtroom. How do I get there? So those are more research heavy, and those usually take longer.
Writing can be a lonely process. No question about it. I remember this other writer, John Sanford. He had this Lucas Davenport character, and I'm from Minnesota, so I loved that series of books. And he had a similar path. He was a writer for the Minneapolis Tribune, and then he kept cranking out these. Is there a fraternity of you guys? Robert Tannenbaum, the former mayor of Beverly Hills, his son Billy is a very good friend of mine, and we've had him on the show several times. But is there a camaraderie with you and some of these other A-list writers around the world?
I mean, I know John, and we've done stuff together. 2 things. One is, if I wanted to go to a mystery book convention, I could go to one almost every weekend.
Right.
They're all over the place, all over the world. And and early in my career that was important. So I was a real road dog, and so you meet all these people, and you become friends, and you see each other from time to time. You're texting all the time. Lee Child's a good friend of mine, Harlan Coben. We just know everybody. And what's good about it is we're not competitors. Guess what? If you like mystery novels, you don't read one a year. You read, you're a voracious reader usually, and so it's not like, hey, if you buy Sanford's book, you're not going to buy my book. That doesn't even enter the picture. So we're not competitive. We're very supportive of each other, and ask questions about agents and deals and stuff like that all the time.
Can I give you guys my my Harlan Coben story?
Mm-hmm.
So this is probably 2004, and I used to like his books where he had the win, right? The agent, the former Duke basketball player, right? So I loved his books, and he used to have these kind of funny, sports themed thrillers and capers before he got into the other stuff. So I was a fan of his, got a hold of him. I was living in Phoenix at the time, and I was just in touch with him. And then he tells me that he's coming to Phoenix for a book signing. I said, hey, let's meet up. We'll grab some dinner. So this is when my wife was pregnant, with our daughter who's now almost 19. And so we were at the mall. You get the cravings of a wife. When they're pregnant, you got to go where you're told. If that means the bar at Red Lobster so she can have popcorn shrimp, You know what those, right? When you have a wife that's pregnant. So we were at Cheesecake Factory. And this was when I was just packing the food away, right? Because we were always eating. I ate an entire entree at the Cheesecake Factory of chicken marsala. It's 3 chicken breasts with the sauce. It's probably 4,000 calories, right? At least. So then
She's pregnant or you're pregnant.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so he flies in. I get the call as we're leaving Cheesecake Factory. He said, "Hey, I'm coming. I'm landing in Phoenix. Hey, do you want to get together and grab something to eat?" I go, "Sure." He goes, "Have you eaten?" I go, "No." So we go and pick him up at the hotel. My wife was with me too, and then we take him to my favorite
Cheesecake Factory.
No, we take him to my favorite restaurant in Scottsdale, another Italian place called Tommaso's. And I acted like I hadn't eaten, and I crushed another entire bowl of pasta.
Couldn't imagine.
I mean, that's a lot of food, and that's my Harlan Coben story. But how I didn't burst
Made me hungry.
Yeah, right. Do you always have one big idea in the back of your mind, or is there something else because you've cranked out so much? Is there an end? Is there an end to this, or you just gonna keep going until you don't want to do it anymore?
No, I'm not. That's why I say I'm not a creative genius. I think those are people that keel over on their laptop like Elmore Leonard did, or I don't think I'll do this to the end of my life. I think I'm 68. I think I'm going to do it till I'm about 70, and then there'll be an end. I'm not going to do the Harry Bosch gets hit by a bus, but
it was an idea at least.
I hope to conclude the series in a fulfilling way, but we'll see.
Well, true crime, our podcast is we do really well, and we just notice the true crime, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it's like you said earlier, I think people want to try to solve a crime and they listen to it. And so it just keeps getting bigger. And I always tell Tom, I go, crime does pay. Yeah. And it's not ending. You just, technology with DNA, and we're going to find out these cases in the Idaho murder. It's another one that we're going to go down to Moscow Audio during that trial. Yeah. We want to do these things. And I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And when I didn't hang out with Jeff Dahmer, but I know where he lived. And I know that, hey, so you become sort of fascinated because you're part of, everybody wants to be part of a story. And every day someone goes, I got an OJ story. And because they want to be part of it, related to it, because they feel sort of important to, hey, I can kind of relate to it. Everybody loves true crime. And that's why I don't think you're going to stop at 70. Well, I'm sorry.
I might do podcasts or something, but the novel stuff, I really think there's an end game to it for me, just because it's kind of hard to keep it going. I'm not complaining about anything. I have more success than I deserve, but at some point, I'm pretty sure I'll stop doing it.
Yeah, that's a long run. And you're almost a slave to it, really, because, you have a contract with a publisher, you have fans that are expecting something, you want to keep developing the stories, but these words still have to appear, right? Yeah. So what's your process? Do you write at any time of the day, or do you take this like a job and you're up and you're writing for 3 hours in the morning, or?
Well, I'm lucky because of the newspaper experience, I have a pretty good work ethic.
Yeah, disciplines.
Yeah, and so I'm a morning writer. I like to get up super early, start writing before like the city wakes up, type of thing. And then it just depends on how it's going, how long I do it through the day. But yeah, every morning I try to write, and usually it's every morning. It's like 7 days a week. It might only be for a couple hours on Sunday, but I just feel like you got to keep momentum in writing.
You mentioned earlier to Tom about Tropic Thunder. You said, you know what, that Matthew McConaughey, that guy would play a great Mickey Haller in Lincoln Lawyer. Do you see certain directors with a certain style that would be great for a project like a Michael Mann who did Collateral, the whole kind of L.A., that different look of a cab driver going through elegant parts to ghetto parts? I think of Michael Mann as I don't know why, if you like him or not, but I see him as part of your clique.
Well, it's interesting. I think the Bosch show really looks like a Michael Mann thing, and what we did was hire his producer. He had this producer did Heat, did
Manhunter. That was one of my favorite.
Yeah, he didn't do Collateral. He left him, I think, after The Insider. But anyway, he produced like
Right.
5 Michael Mann movies, including Heat. And like in the Bosch show, Harry Bosch's house was Robert De Niro's house in Heat.
Huh.
And like our producer, Peter Jan Bruga, is very much responsible for the look of the show. And I think it really kind of looks like Heat and looks like kind of like the Michael Mann aesthetic.
Does anybody even know? What a great trivia
Right,
question.
that's really cool.
That's De Niro's house in
right?
Heat.
Because in Heat, didn't Pacino also live in the hills? I think he did,
I'm
didn't
not
he?
sure. He lived in
He
like
might
that
have apartments or-
industrial-looking
Yeah.
place.
Oh,
but,
because I remember the opening scene with him and his wife, and they had like a yeah, you're right, almost like a loft or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. You know, you mentioned Heat, Michael Mann, the North Hollywood shooting. Wasn't that kind of based? Wasn't Heat a little bit based off that?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
covered that story, right? The
No.
North Hollywood shooting. You weren't
that was after I left.
after you left. Okay. Yeah, man, you some crazy ones. Did you, because you were writing a novel during the OJ saga and the timing was just perfect where you could see it unfold on TV and underneath you living in the Hollywood Hills. How closely did you follow that? And what did you take away? Mistakes being made. You knew these detectives. You had worked with some of these guys. What was your thoughts about, you know, how it all went down, or were you not even interested in it?
No, I was interested in it, but you know, my wife watched it wall to wall in like, you know, the front part of the house while I was in the back writing. So I would get pulled into interesting stuff. But I remember, you know, I was no longer at the paper, but I still kept some of my sources. And I hate to call them sources because they're friends. Some of them I'm still help me with my books, and we're personal friends. We do stuff together. But
Took a Tom's my source.
yeah. So now I'm forgetting his name. Who was the detective?
Van Etter and Lang.
Phil Van
and,
Etter.
No,
Mark
Fuhrman.
Fuhrman. Yeah.
So I remember one of my sources early on saying this is going to blow up because of Fuhrman, and I said why, and he wouldn't tell me. He said just he said just wait and watch, and it did. So I remember that was pretty interesting that I gotten a heads up on that. So I was kind of waiting, like, how's this going to blow up? And so when he was involved, I was watching that a lot.
Well, it had to intrigue you too because it was based on a writer and all those tapes when he was assisting her in North Carolina about background for a procedure for cops. And then,
Well, what was interesting was, so I quit. I was in the middle of writing a book. It was a Harry Bosch book, so I finished my 4th book, and I was no longer a journalist. So my next book, my 5th book, was called The Poet, and it was about a journalist, and it was kind of like my goodbye to that career and my business, and it was kind of like, you know, it actually, the first line is "Death is my beat," and that was the way I looked at my life as a crime reporter, and the story starts in Denver, ends in L.A., and I had descriptions of the you know, the TV trucks up and down Spring Street and all that, all around the courthouse, and my editor said, I think you should cut that stuff out because no one will by the time this book comes out, no one will care about that case. And it was like another, what do you call it? Blunder. I did take it out.
sorry,
so,
Michael.
yeah.
I was joking when I said it the first time.
I mean, it was an opportunity to say something about the media craze and how media changed. And I was writing about the media. I was writing about a reporter. And so I kind of missed the boat on that.
Yeah. Yeah, but you've got a mind that thinks like a detective, and you analyze these stories. What do you think with the OJ thing? Do you think it's cut and dried? He went there, murdered 2 people. Has any other theory? So many people come up to me about Jason and these. Everybody hears that kind of stuff. Cato obviously, you know, gets bored by this kind of thing too.
No, I don't.
But what do you think? Because it's just there's so many things that were involved. Some made sense, some didn't. There's so much evidence that wasn't used. Tom Lang, you know, his warehouse is full of it.
You're a friend of Tom Lang. Have you ever like talked to him and?
No, I mean he's talked a little bit about stuff that wasn't used and that should have been used, and witnesses that weren't called because the prosecutors thought that they were like too overwhelming on the jury, things like that. I think I believe he did it. But, you know, that's just based on.
Phil Van Etter said, at one point I was with the detectives a lot with interviews and in their cars, and not that I became great friends, but I think I'm a friend of Tom Lang now. But they were, when you're comfortable with someone, they start opening up, and I could see that they were real human to me. And they just said, he just said, Cato, This OJ case, it's a 2-minute Columbo. And that's it.
With all the evidence, it should be a 2-minute Columbo episode.
It's a 2-minute
Wrap
Columbo
it up,
episode.
done,
It's like
over and out.
It's over. So, and I just remember that always stuck. Like you, I kept that as a note, like a 2-minute Columbo.
Yeah.
What a great line that he had. So when you're writing, you said death is my beat, and you're writing for the LA Times. Was there one something you wrote about that's still kind of very disturbing? Like mentally, how could someone have done this? Is there one story that sticks out in your mind? Not to write a book on or anything, but just something like, because Wonderland, the beating, and you couldn't see their faces. It's just the image disturbs me. So, is there something
the
wrote
one
about?
that is really well, there's two stories that stick with me, and one was kind of a big story, but one was we ended up not writing about it because I got called out that there were 4 people dead in a house, and it was a mother and 3 kids, and it was like the late at night. I'm out at the crime scene tape, thinking this could be really big, for 4 murders, and then this detective I knew, he came out the door and he kind of did there's a lot of reporters at the tape, and he kind of did this thing to me, which meant like, get away from those other guys and I'll tell you something. And then when I went over and I got a chance to talk to him, and he said she killed them and then killed herself. She killed her 3 kids, and he had tears in his eyes. And I just always remember that. And, like what the situation was that made a mother do that. And it was really an important thing for me to see that this detective who had done many, many murder cases was so affected.
Well,
Yeah,
and probably
kids.
too, because you get calloused. I mean, you see criminals die, shootouts, murders, bad people, whatever. But when kids are involved, and it's just so senseless like that. It's so crazy how life works sometimes, because what if you had gotten a huge offer to stay in Miami for the Miami Herald or whatever, and you didn't come to LA? Could you have had this writing career? Because so much of it is based on LA, right?
Yeah, I
and
don't
these
think
characters.
so. I mean, LA stories were always my favorites. The big 3 writers for me were Raymond Chandler, Joseph Wambaugh, and Ross McDonald. They all wrote about LA. My favorite movie, the one that made me want to become a writer, was The Long Goodbye with Elliot Gould. And that made me find the Chandler. It's based on a Chandler book, and I read the Chandler books. And when I was finished reading all his books, I said, I want to do this. And so LA seemed to be like my destination. And so when I was living in South Florida and I grew up there, I wrote 2 novels that were never published because they weren't good enough. I never even sent them out. And I just kind of knew I was approaching age 30. I said, if I'm going to try this one more time, because my wife and I wanted to have a family. And I was saying, like, no, I got to write 5 nights a week and on weekends when I'm not working at the paper.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to try this once more, and I want to shake up my life, and hopefully that will help me. Hopefully the 3rd time would be the charm. And so I applied for anywhere that would take me out here.
Okay.
So I did a lot of interviews with other papers. But
Well, that's strategic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you knew for you to do what you want to do as a novelist, this was the place you had to be. So if it took a couple years or whatever,
then you
right?
had that story on the day I started this tunnel robbery, and I suddenly knew this is what I'm going to write. It's very mystical.
Yeah, and also in LA, you hook up with a literary agent, obviously, that kind of set you on the course of success for all your books.
I used a New York guy, but I had a guy out here who sold the books to Paramount and stuff, and very different types of agents, like between a literary agent in New York and a literary agent in Hollywood.
Yeah, different level of hustle. That's for sure, right? And just urgency, and the literary agents are different. Is there any fan that you've discovered who loves your work that you were blown away by? A president or just something crazy like that? Because, I mean, they're so mainstream. Your TV shows are big time. Have you ever heard from somebody going, holy crap,
Well, he's got
that's
Matthew
really cool?
McConaughey's already a fan. I mean,
well, outside of those guys who were, put those stories to life for you.
Like I said, my first book only had 12,000 printing, but before my second, so I had one book out, that was pretty much only sold in like mystery bookstores. There used to be hundreds of those. Right. Now there's very few. But so I got this call, and they said this is the White House signal office, and President Clinton is flying to L.A. And would like to meet you. Would you greet his plane? And I basically said, yeah, right. Cops are big pranksters, and they've always pranked me on stuff. One time, and they go to extreme. Like one time, I got this very formal letter asking me to sing the Star Spangled Banner at the Tampa Bay Rays game, and it was on letterhead and everything, and it was.
That is great.
Luckily, I didn't show up.
That is a great prank.
Anyway, I thought this was a prank from the White House, and it turned out to be real. And they said that here's the catch: he's landing at 4 a.m. and it's a closed landing. There won't be anyone else there. But if you want to, be at the bottom of the steps of Air Force One and say, "Welcome to L.A., Mr. President," you can. And it's like I had one book out that had a printing of 12,000.
Come on!
And somehow he got it. And what's interesting is Harry Bosch never knew his father. Harry Bosch loves the saxophone. Clinton's didn't know his father and plays the saxophone. So that was
something registered. I mean, it did.
Yeah.
And that shows you how powerful your words are, too. And these characters you created, it had to just propel you going, holy crap, limited run. The president loves it. I'm meeting him at LAX on Air Force One.
JFK, this is a great story because of the success of when JFK said to his favorite book at that time was From Russia with Love, and it made Ian Fleming a superstar because of the endorsement. And
so I have a picture of me and Clinton, and I actually had a galley of my next book that I gave him, and I have a picture of him looking at it.
Clinton, I'm not going to top your story, but Clinton, I got invited to the correspondence dinner when Clinton was president.
Oh, okay.
And at that time, everybody wanted to meet me in the world, and I'm being humble. I'm just saying what was going on in my life, like anywhere I would go. So I'm invited to that dinner, and I had the chance of Bill Maher was the host, and I became his friend because of I did Politically Incorrect. It was on Comedy Central at the time. So I just remember Clinton when it was meeting there, and everybody made jokes about his weight a little bit there, and I said it was great meeting President Clinton, but he kept asking me if I'm going to finish my piccata, my chicken piccata, and but I got a chance to meet. It was Larry King was my date basically, his producing staff, and but that feeling of I was sort of a fish, out of water, and I'm here with these important people, and I met everybody, and that was when at one point I went to another dinner, a meet where Sheikh from Saudi Arabia offered me $20 million to move to Saudi Arabia. And I just said, well, do you want me in the guest tent or whatever instead of house guest? But it was these stories that are just real. And
you can't make them up.
Yeah. And it was
that a blunder that you didn't move to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah. Michael, I'm still scratching lotto tickets now, going, where is that Saudi? Is that offer still good?
He's waiting for the vertical city or whatever they're doing, that 100-mile horizontal city. Is Blunder going to work its way into your next novel?
I think it should.
As you kill off a podcast host in that book?
The big blunder. I think that's a good one.
The big blunder.
Oh, man. Is there any story out there that you're fascinated by that you want to do more on? Like you did with Wonderland? Is there? Because I'm fascinated by Night Stalker, and we just did a killer series. Pardon the pun.
Yeah,
we just did a great series with Gil Carrillo. Then Cato and I went to all the sites. We went to all the sites, and I think we're going to do that with the Wonderland. I think we could do that. We could go where John Holmes' hands are hand printed into one of Eddie Nash's sidewalks in front of his club. We go to Nash's house. We go obviously to the Wonderland house.
Well, and everybody on our show loves this because we did it with I've never been back to Brentwood. We did a show where I go back to that scene. I just stay away. Just because I wanted to. So that's the first time I go back. It was like we went pretty much everywhere, and it was, for me, it was sort of eerie, but everybody, I could see how they relate to our show and go, this is really great. So we did the Night Stalker, and it was so great seeing, the skyline of LA, and then you could zoom out and just see, here we are, the street vendors in a Latin community, and then Skid Row where he hung out. And
Mike's Liquors, where he was spotted when he got off the Greyhound bus. And that kind
of brings you back 40 years or whatever of what it was like, and it was not much has changed, to tell the truth. It's still, these spots are there, and
I will tell you, Eddie Nash's house was knocked down, and it was just rebuilt because I live in that neighborhood,
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'll see something new when you go there.
No, and that was the same thing with Rockingham. That house was
Yeah.
knocked down, but
Oh, yeah.
we were in the alley behind Bundy, Nicole's condo. Cato didn't go there, but I did. It was, you could feel it. I felt it was chilling because you've seen so many images. You knew the Bronco went right there. You knew what was going on. And they say the same thing over that Wonderland house too. It has to be. You see those steps going up to that kind of the apartment that's in there on that narrow street, and with the bad intentions that those guys had. I asked Tom Lang this: how many killers do you think there actually were? Because you had Nash's bodyguard, obviously. You had Holmes, probably, and then where did they go to Home Depot and get a couple day laborers to help? Here's a lead pipe. Let's go create carnage. How many do you think actually did the killings?
I think it was not including Holmes, three real killers, and they made him take some wax, as Tom said.
Yep, exactly.
And,
palm print on the bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Implicate him in it 100%. Yeah.
The one that I'm really fascinated, and I might do something on, is the Cotton Club case. Do you know what about that one? So that
Cotton
was
Club
about
was the nightclub. Right?
well,
they did a film with Richard
Francis,
Gere, I think.
Yeah, Richard Gere and Nicolas Cage were in a film called Cotton Club, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and it was produced by Robert Evans, who was very flamboyant. There's just a show last year about the making of The Godfather, where he's like on drugs all the time and all that.
Right.
So anyway, to get financing for that, Evans got in bed with some very bad people, and one of them was murdered. And Evans was never implicated in it, but it was a hitman type thing. The guy was basically kidnapped from Hollywood, and his body was found out in the desert.
Well, I think there was a film with Tim Robbins.
You talking about the player?
The player.
Yeah,
which
but that
possibly was. I mean, but it has that.
Right. That's where he was the studio executive, and then that writer had sent him that manuscript, and then ended up being dead.
But I think that was a Robin Evans
maybe
film.
It might have been,
Hey, he's one of the most fascinating characters ever, Evans.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of his involvement in The Godfather, and just he was larger than life, involved in everything, knew everybody.
Yeah, that show last year was called The Offer.
Oh, it was great.
It was really good.
It was so
I
good.
liked it,
Yeah, and Miles Tiller. I mean, it was just phenomenal. That show was amazing. You don't have to be a fan of The Godfather to like that. Just
Where
to
have
see,
you even seen it?
right. And just to understand the backstory of what it took to actually get that thing get made.
Hollywood story behind it is pretty interesting.
So go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say this was like the kind of blemish on Evans' reputation. And, it took him a lot of years to where anyone in Hollywood would work with him again. But it was a hitman case. These hitmen were paid to do this, but they also did other murders, and some of them I wrote about when I was a reporter. So when it went to trial, it was called the Cotton Club case, but there was other murders that they were convicted of. And so I know I have some, knowledge from way back when I was a reporter, and I always thought that would be a good one to go back to.
Sure.
Yeah, I think did Joseph Wamba, did he do The Onion Field?
Mm-hmm.
He did The Onion Field. So there's a certain type of film, and I'm sure you probably loved In Cold Blood, the way it was portrayed with the black and white and the Clutter family. It's just these are edge of your seat, like the mind of I don't know if you get so much in the mind of the killer. You're in the it's more. That book is more about the mind of the two killers. Scott Wilson played him, and also Robert Blake. Yeah. But Capote did it for that. But your sense of Wamba's a fan, and that film is fascinating also. Crime is just...
yeah. Michael, did you ever cover Menendez? Because that was when you were at the LA Times.
No.
89. Yeah. It's crazy. Blink of an eye. These guys are in their 50s now. How about your career? Does it feel like it went by fast? Does it seem like it's that long ago? You had that press pass and you were covering crime here in LA?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had this happen to me last night. I got home from doing media for the Bosch show, and there's a box, and I open it. It's my copies of my next book, and it's my 40th book. And so I was sitting there thinking, like, wow, 40 books. Did I ever think that would happen? And it seems to have gone by very fast.
God,
yes.
And to think they're all bestsellers too. Absolutely amazing.
Time flies when you're throwing clocks.
Right. So Nightshade coming out in May.
Nightshade, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little sneak peek about what it's about?
Well, I heard it's a new character. named Stillwell, and I had heard through some law enforcement friends that out on Catalina, the island of Catalina off the coast here, it's part of L.A. County, so it's Sheriff's Department territory, and they have one detective assigned to Catalina. I thought, like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Like, so this guy has to cover everything, you know, from shoplifters to assaults and so forth. The only thing that detective doesn't handle are homicides. They would come out from, you know, the homicide squad to handle something like that. So I wrote about that, and it's, you know, he does handle all kinds of stuff. And of course, there is a homicide, and he can't keep his hands off it. So he's
Right.
He's bending the rules.
Cool, new character.
The killer must be on the island, right? Unless the Coast Guard's got the.
I don't want to give anything.
Yeah, you can find out.
I don't want to give it away, but
do you think?
But he does come over here. You know, it would be hard to keep the whole investigation
Right.
on that little island. So he
tourism would go
follow
down.
clues over
Yeah.
here, and then he goes over there.
Can you say what is the book current day? Is it take because Catalina? I imagine there's crime when it had a casino. When it was a casino, it must have been gambling and alcohol leads to some sort of crime.
Yeah.
I just wonder what the history is.
Yeah, it's done right now, and it's funny how many people take the ferries out there because they think there's a casino. And they call it the casino, but there's no casino.
No, there's no casino.
Which
out there.
I think they should open it because that's. I mean, that's just a marketing.
How could you imagine the amount of ferries going out there during the day if there was a casino out there?
It may
That'd be
happen.
amazing. You had to spend a lot of time out there just to do this book. Yeah, but backstory on Catalina Island is that's where Alan Park was, the limo driver, when he had to testify for the grand jury. And he was out there because his mom was out there.
Right.
He was going to the fireworks display, so they had to send a sheriff's LAPD helicopter.
Marcia Clark
brought
said she
him
ordered-
in so
they
he
ordered
could
a helicopter
testify.
for
Yeah,
him.
Catalina Island, amazing. Hey, I heard this story last night. I love old school Hollywood. I just do all the characters and just the stories. You know, Bel Air Country Club. Are you a golfer, Michael? Do you golf at all? Okay, Bel Air Country Club. Are you a member?
Bel Air? No.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a member of Wilshire.
Okay, so Bel Air, I was talking to my friend who's a member there. I go, give me some stories of people that had gotten kicked out, like had their membership revoked. He told me this story that is so crazy. Bing Crosby was drinking in the clubhouse, smoking a cigar, and on the first tee, he kept practicing his chips. Instead of, he had a wedge, and he was chipping on the first tee. They kicked him out for that. And with him that day was Frank Sinatra. He was in the clubhouse. It's 100% a true story.
That sounds like one of Michael's friends.
No, this is 100% a true story.
Because I would
But
think
they have rules, man. If your hat's on backwards, you're gone.
Yeah.
Right? Your shirt's got to be tucked in. But Bing Crosby getting kicked out of Bel Air Country Club.
He was probably a member of Lakeside too, because that's Bob Hope's up to the lake.
Yeah, Lakeside.
Yeah. So there's.
Well, hey, you get to play a little golf. Got this new book coming out. Busy week for you. We really appreciate you coming in here.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, we'd love to have you again anytime. Now we know the commute isn't that bad for you. We can call you on a moment's notice. Michael, come on down.
Wasn't knocking your door when we're at Eddie Nash's going, Michael, we're just stopping by for a drink. And we'll go back to filming.
Michael, I may have to ask you one special favor. You know, you met Zeus. What the hell was going on? The sonic boom. What were you playing a bass drum over there? What did you drop?
It was a story. You gotta
it
be
was
fascinated.
distracted. Well, were you fascinated by the story?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, and something fell behind me. So,
Oh my God, Michael, I apologize for that news.
no worries.
If he keeps this up, is there any chance that you could kill him off in one of your next books? A character named Zeus. If this keeps up, Zeus, I'm watching you. He's a great producer, though. And how about the studio? Amazing,
Very
isn't
nice,
it?
Yeah.
All right. Anything you want to ask Cato? Any burning question?
No, I think I'm good. I've heard it all.
I heard it all.
He's already been asked it too.
He has.
A
Okay.
million times.
All right. Well, hey, the one and only Michael Connelly. This was an amazing episode. Load us up with comments. Watch this episode a few times. Listen to us on audio. Follow the K-Train on social media.
Yes.
Follow me. We'll keep you updated on everything. Buy Michael's book. The notes are going to be in the description of this podcast. We'll put a one-click for you for the pre-sale, and let's do it. So this was amazing, Michael. We really do appreciate
Thanks for your
it.
time. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having
Great to
me.
meet you.
For the one and only Michael
old-
Connelly.
I guess we're doing
For the one and only
the new
Cato
way.
Kalin, Zeus, I'm giving you one from afar here. I'm Tom Zenner. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Well,
And
I think Michael was just about to say something.
No. I was just saying thanks for having me.
okay, no, seriously,
Love
Michael,
it.
we really do appreciate this. And thank you, Tom Lang, for making the introduction so we can make this happen. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. 2 episodes each week now. We're going to jump into a new serial killer case, and make sure you go watch the Richard Ramirez saga, including when we went to all the landmarks.
Little hint here, real quick. We may be going to my home city of Milwaukee, where there was a huge thing that went on there. And I'll give you a hint. 5 Guys. It's a hamburger joint. All right, it's a Dahmer lead-in.
It's a Dahmer joke. We may be going to Milwaukee. That might be the next serial killer case we handle. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Tom Zenner, and we will see you very, very soon.